Hi guys, Dr. J here, and in this video we're going to talk about radio communication and actually a couple different types of communication which you can use as a drone pilot to be informed of what's going on around you. And one thing I want to say right off the bat is that you won't in general be able to transmit information, but you'll be able to listen in on other pilots that are transmitting information. So listening to the radio can help you get important information, valuable information, but you are not allowed to transmit on aviation frequencies as a small UAS operator. And this is an FCC regulation, not even FAA. You have to have a license to transmit on aviation frequencies, and so airplanes actually have a license associated often with the aircraft itself. So this is not something that you can transmit on unless you have a serious emergency. For example, let's say you are doing a flight at or near an airport, and you lose control of your drone and it flies off. That is the one exception where you're allowed to transmit, where you actually have a very serious emergency ongoing. In general, you're not allowed to transmit, but it can be very useful to listen in on these radio frequencies that pilots are using and get an idea about what's going on in your area. Now, there is some interesting kind of nomenclature associated with these flights. You can see here, letters have their own name. And then also elevations above 18,000 feet are given as flight levels, and flight levels are separated are 100 feet increments in height. So 20,000 feet is going to be flight level 200. Okay, so this is how things will be called out on the radio. And directions are going to be given as 3-digit numbers clockwise from magnetic north, sometimes also as clock numbers. So having this radio information is a lot of times really useful, especially when you're operating around an area where there are a lot of other airplanes operating. And I'll have some links in the notes to this video with some example radios that you can check out for yourself. Now, around towered airports, I may have mentioned this in a different video. Around towered airports, pilots are going to start calling out their position about 10 miles away. Around untowered airports, pilots are not required to make position calls, but they can. And they're going to be doing that using either the Unicom operator, the CTAF, or a flight service station, which are actually quite rare now. But this CTAF and Unicom frequencies are going to be very common. So Unicom, this is going to be a universal communication station. This is going to be an air-ground communication facility, which is not air traffic control. In other words, a private entity, maybe someone who works at an airport, a small airport, or owns the airport. They're going to be listening for pilots calling in and giving them information, for example, about the weather, about wind and traffic patterns, maybe requests to land. This is going to be available when there's no control tower or flight service station available. And so this is one of the two options that you have to get information about an airport, around an airport, when there's no control tower. And again, this is not something that you're going to be broadcasting to. It's going to be something that you're listening in on. You're flying around a small airport and you're trying to keep track of other pilots that are coming into the area. The other version of this is called CTAF, Common Traffic Advisory Frequency. And this is where pilots can broadcast their activity around an airport, such as if they're about to land at an airport, specifically, again, for non-towered airports. And there are typically specific CTAF frequencies, although you can use the Unicom frequency. These may be shared by multiple airports. There's also a multi-com frequency, which is 122.9. That's kind of a universal frequency that pilots can use to broadcast information about what they're doing. So this is kind of several different things that are a little bit similar, probably a little bit confusing. But the basic idea is we're going to be using air traffic control when it's available. If air traffic control is not available, we'll be using either Unicom or CTAF if that is available. And how are you going to know if that's available? That's going to be given by the chart supplement, and it's going to be listed on the charts shown for each airport. If those are not available, then the default is the multi-com frequency, 122.9. That's never going to change. You'll use that. And again, for you as a UAS operator, you're going to be listening in on these frequencies. So let's look at some examples here. These are excerpts from charts, and we're going to talk more about charts in another video. But these are a couple different airports, all with different frequencies. Let's look here. We've got Rolla Downtown Airport. This is going to be, you see the little C there in a signal. That's telling us that's our CTAF frequency. So we're going to be listening in on 122.8, St. Louis Airport. If we come up here, this is information about St. Louis, Lambert International Airport. CT Control Tower. control tower is 118.5, 120.05, and 132.475. So in this case, we actually have 3 different frequencies for our control tower, and there's no CTAF frequency. In comparison, the Waynesville-St. Robert Airport has a control tower and a CTAF frequency, which are the same. So in this case, 125.4 is both the control tower frequency and the CTAF frequency. Here's one more example, the Vichy Airport, or the Rolla National Airport in Vichy. This is going to, again, have a CTAF frequency there, 123.0. And again, our little C symbol denotes that we have a CTAF frequency here. So this is just some examples of what this will look like on charts, and we'll talk more about this when we talk about charts. The chart supplement also has detailed information. So what is chart supplement? This is detailed information about airports, formerly called the Airport Facility Directory. You can download the chart supplement for free online. There's the link right there. I'll have that link in the notes to this video as well. And the chart supplement is organized into several sections. There's a list of airports by state. And so let's look at some examples. So here is the Rolla Municipal Airport. Here you can see information about communications. There's the CTAF Unicom frequency, 122.8. Let's look at the Rolla Vichy Airport. Here we are, CTAF Unicom 123.0. And so these charts are going to have the frequencies next to the airport name, but the chart supplement will have detailed information. So actually it turns out that an airport can have open hours when the airport control tower is operating, and then it may have closed hours when you would be using the CTAF Unicom frequency to broadcast your information as a pilot. And at non-towered airports, you would just have the CTAF or Unicom frequencies. You would not have a control tower. So again, kind of a little bit of confusing situation, kind of depending on what the situation with the airport is. But the biggest thing I think to keep in mind is that with a control tower, you'll have specific frequencies associated with that control tower. If there's no control tower, then you're falling back to one of these options. You either have the CTAF frequency or the Unicom frequency. And if none of those options are available because you have a very small airport, for example, then you're going to be going back to this multicom frequency, which is 122.9. So in terms of getting this information that you need, you'll be able to use the charts or the chart supplement to find out what are those frequencies that you should be listening in on at a particular airport. There's also the ATIS. So the ATIS is an automated terminal information service. That's providing information on the local weather at an airport. It's a recorded message. Probably you all have heard a message like this broadcasted from a weather radio. Where do you find out about the ATIS and how to listen to it? That's going to, again, be on the charts by the airport information sometimes, but definitely in the chart supplement. So the ATIS is one way to get recorded messages about the weather. There are a couple of others. I think one is called ASOS and one is called AWOS for automated weather service. And we'll talk more about these when we talk about weather. To the image of the chart supplement, you'll see weather data sources, and those are the frequencies and phone numbers that you'll be able to access the weather information. In fact, you see here, this is a different one than ATIS. This is the ASOS. These are just different names for weather information. Now, the last way that the FAA is going to communicate with pilots in general is through the use of NOTAMs, Notices to Air Missions. And I've got the links there. Those will be in the notes to the video. This is going to be information that couldn't be published in the chart supplement or is not published on the charts. And this is temporary notices in some cases. In some cases, you might even have drone-specific NOTAMs or bird-specific NOTAMs, volcanic eruptions, special airspace restrictions during sporting events, for example. This is going to be the information that is for that temporary event. There's several types of NOTAMs. I'm not going to go through all those. You can read that. And NOTAMs are important. Manned flights are required to look at relevant NOTAMs before flying. You, as a UAS operator, should also look at the NOTAMs that are relevant for your flight, for your area. The FAA is going to hold you responsible if something happens when there was a NOTAM issued, even if you didn't know about the NOTAM. So it's important to look at those NOTAMs and just be aware of them. There are problems with NOTAMs just in terms of understanding them. They can be difficult to interpret, but still something that you need to be aware of and that you need to keep track of as you're going out and flying.